In the aftermath of September 11th, we were told we were attacked because they hate our freedoms, because they are evil. We were offered comforting fictions. But what if the truth is far more simple and far more dangerous? What if they acted with perfect moral certainty because of what they believed? This is the unsettling premise of neuroscientist Sam Harris's The End of Faith. Harris argues that we are at war, not with a tactic called terrorism, but with a specific set of religious beliefs. And to understand this war, we must be willing to look at those beliefs without flinching. Harris begins with a brutal diagnosis. Faith, he defines, is the license religious people give one another to keep believing when reasons fail. It is an intellectual solvent that dissolves the very connection between belief and evidence. And in a world now saturated with advanced technology, this mode of thinking has become, in his view, a clear and present danger to the entire world. The 9/11 hijackers were not poor, uneducated, or insane. They were, by many accounts, relatively normal men. But they were men who believed in the literal truth of the Quran and the Hadith. They believed in paradise. Harris forces us to read the descriptions of this paradise, not as metaphor, but as the incentive structure that motivated these men. He quotes from the Hadith, Sahih al-Bukhari. In paradise, there is a tent of a single hollow pearl, whose width is 60 miles. In every corner of it, there will be a wife for the believer. And another, the smallest reward for the people of paradise is an abode where there are 80,000 servants and 72 wives. This is not a fringe interpretation. This is mainstream Islamic eschatology. The hijackers left behind videos, not of rage, but of serene anticipation. They believed they were about to enter a world of eternal pleasure as a direct reward for killing unbelievers. Harris does not shy away from the texts that justify such violence. He cites the doctrine of abrogation in Islam, where later, more aggressive verses in the Quran cancel earlier, more tolerant ones. He points to Surah 9, revealed late in Muhammad's life, which commands, "Fight those who believe not in God nor the last day, and fight the people of the book until they pay the jizya, tribute, with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." For Harris, the problem is not that these verses exist. The problem is that they are believed to be the literal, perfect, and eternal word of the Creator of the universe. When your actions are justified by the ultimate authority, no earthly criticism, no appeal to secular law or human compassion can ever truly counter it. And here, Harris makes his most controversial and philosophically ruthless move. He turns his critique not only on the fundamentalist, but on the religious moderate. He argues that the moderate is in fact an enabler. The moderate, by reinterpreting their faith as a benign force for good, provides cover for the fundamentalist. The moderate says, "My God is loving and kind." And in so doing, they make the very idea of faith, of believing without evidence, socially respectable. Harris writes, "Religious moderation is the product of secular knowledge and scriptural ignorance." The moderate himself refuses to think in such terms, "My God is loving and kind," but he fails to realize that it is his own willingness to be reasonable that is the true measure of his humanity. The fundamentalist who flies a plane into a building is, in the context of his faith, being more intellectually consistent than the moderate who condemns him, while still holding the same holy book to be divine. The moderate has smuggled in his 21st century secular morality to override the actual content of his scripture. But for Harris, the ultimate moral indictment of faith lies not in its capacity for physical violence, but in its psychological sadism. He asks us to truly contemplate the Christian doctrine of hell. He writes, "The idea that a being of infinite goodness and power would create a world in which certain of his children face the unending torment of hell is truly diabolical. Any God who would sustain such a place for its creatures would be a monster." He forces the believer and us to sit with this, to believe that a finite sin, mere unbelief, warrants infinite conscious torture, is to commit what Harris sees as the ultimate betrayal of our own moral intuition. It is to worship power and cruelty and to call it love. This, for him, is the core corruption. Faith can make the monstrous seem holy. So what is the alternative? Harris is not a nihilist. He proposes a radical foundation for a new morality: well-being. He argues that questions of right and wrong, good and evil, are not metaphysical mysteries, but are fundamentally questions about the conscious experience of sentient beings. The fact that there are peaks and valleys of human well-being is all one needs to know to ground morality in reality. He states, "Just as we can have a science of health, we can have a science of morality, using reason and evidence, especially neuroscience, to understand what causes beings to flourish or to suffer." And he reclaims spirituality. Through a detailed exploration of meditation and mindfulness, Harris argues that profound states of peace, selflessness, and insight are real. But they are not supernatural. They are the natural and largely untapped capacities of the human brain. We can explore the depths of consciousness without believing in ghosts, souls, or gods. This commitment to consequences leads Harris to the most uncomfortable conclusions of his book. He defends profiling, arguing it is a rational, statistical necessity when the threat comes overwhelmingly from a specific demographic. And then the thought experiment. Harris asks us to imagine we have captured a terrorist who has just hidden a nuclear device in Manhattan. It will detonate in hours, killing millions. He refuses to let us off the moral hook. He writes, "If you think the only thing that is at stake when a country is pursuing a policy of torture is the well-being of the suspect, you are not thinking clearly. If there is even one chance in a million that he will tell us something under torture that will lead to the further dismantling of Al-Qaeda, it seems that we should use every tool at our disposal to get him talking." This is not an endorsement of a torture state. It is a brutal challenge to our moral absolutes. Harris argues that if we believe the stakes are truly this high, and he believes religious terrorism makes them so, we must be willing to stare into this abyss and make horrifying calculations. The end of faith is a philosophical firestorm. It is not a balanced debate. It is a prosecutorial brief against 10,000 years of religious thought. Critics call him dogmatic, a new atheist fundamentalist. They argue he ignores the nuance of theology and the violence of secular ideologies. But his central challenge remains, echoing long after the book is closed. In the 21st century, can we any longer afford the luxury of beliefs that are protected from criticism? Can we tolerate the intolerant when they claim a divine mandate? Sam Harris's answer is a stark and unequivocal no. He calls for nothing less than the end of faith as a basis for knowledge and the beginning of a future built on reason, compassion, and a relentless commitment to the well-being of all conscious creatures. The future of reason, he warns, is not an academic preference, it is our only viable future.